pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call this regular board meeting to order. Roll call shows everybody's present. We have no agenda changes. And we have the consent agenda, which includes the August 2nd, 2018 regular board meeting minutes and closed session minutes. License and permits, operator licenses, Lynn A. Belisle and Jill M. Summers, which I assume has the approval of the police department. Presentation of accounts and other claims against the village, and request for Allegheny County reimbursement to village for Union Cemetery veterans grave upkeep. If nobody has any questions on this, I'd put them up. We're open for motion to approve these.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we need to do roll
Put a
call?
roll call vote in that we have accounts and claims.
Yeah.
I would suggest a roll call in that there's accounts and claims within the consent. On the approval.
Okay, roll call.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 I'll approve. Presentation, or pre-registered citizens to be heard?
We have Pam Hermans, 448 North Oak Street.
Yes.
It's in regards to the closed session. Could I talk about that now, or?
It was made a closed session, just so that you wouldn't have to speak in public.
Okay.
It's your prerogative, but you'll be given a chance in the closed session.
Yeah, you will be given the same opportunity in closed session.
All right, we'll wait for you.
Anybody else?
No, that's it.
Then we move on to committee reports. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do you want to do it? Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
A couple of items. On September 6th, there'll be a public hearing for the downtown zoning district. And then there will also be a public hearing for a CSM and rezone request. So look for that in the next board meeting.
Any questions or comments on the planning and zoning?
I don't think the CSM needs a public hearing. I think the
No?
public hearing is just on the rezoning.
Okay. No? Does the board approve that?
No, it's,
Then we need to re-notice the public hearing, because the public hearing went out just for the rezoning. I didn't see that the CSM required a public hearing.
It likely does. I mean, in my opinion, it passed the...
Well, we can talk about
yeah,
that.
we'll talk about that.
Okay, sorry to
Okay.
interject.
No, I'm glad you did, because I want to do by the book.
Anything else? Then we move on to library board.
Okay, we met at the beginning of the month. I believe we're talking about some adjustments in hours so that we have some earlier morning hours beginning October 1st. Am I right, Ally? And Ally will probably go into more detail. And then a couple evenings will stay the same for programming, that kind of thing. So there were requests by the public for some earlier hours, early opening hours. I think that's about it. We'll be looking at budget real soon.
Any questions or comments on the library board? Hearing none, there's no unfinished business, so we'll move to new business. Presentation of 2017 annual financial report.
Well, good evening. I'm Karen Herber with Herber Rose. We did your audit this year, so I'm just going to walk you relatively briefly through the audit. Certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And if I don't know the answer, then I'll funnel it back through Robert, right?
Russ?
Russ, sorry. I can't see your sign from here.
It's okay, sorry.
Pretty short, maybe if I stood on my tiptoes, there we go. Anyway, I'll funnel those answers back through him if I don't know the answer. So with that, you should have received a bound booklet. That's what I will basically speak to. And starting off on page number 1, and it spans page 1, 2, and 3, is the audit opinion, which for the village itself, you did receive an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance we can provide you. Basically means anything that we asked for when we were here to do the audit was provided to us. And certainly everything that I'll talk about was supported by the various work papers or things that we looked at while we were here. There is on the bottom of page 1, you'll see there is an adverse opinion related to this discreetly presented component unit, which is basically the fire district, and they haven't recorded all of their assets in accordance with accounting principles. That's been there for years and years and years. Nothing unusual, but just so you're aware that is there. Pages 4 through 10 I'm going to skip over. That should be the management's discussion and analysis. Tonight, when you're looking to have something help you go to sleep, take a look at that. It will give you some plain English on information within the financial statements that if you're just looking for actually an easy read to help you compare last year to this year or things of that nature, it's a good spot to go to take a look at. So page number 11 is the statement of net position at the top. It should be on page 11 and 12 actually. And basically for this statement, it is meant to present a long-term picture of what the financial health of the village is. So it includes all of the assets, whether they happen to be short-term, meaning cash, or accounts receivable, taxes receivable, versus things that are long-term, the capital assets, this building, your streets, your sidewalks, any of those kinds of things. And then it compares that to current liabilities, things you would owe within a year, as well as the long-term debt. I'm going to talk about the governmental activities first, which basically is your general fund, your debt service fund, any capital projects funds, any of your special revenue funds, things of that nature. And later on, I'll talk about the business type activities, which is the water and sewer. So as you look at your primary or your governmental activities, you'll see there your total assets were about $18.7 million. You next see an item for deferred outflows of resources. That is purely related to the Wisconsin retirement system, so nothing that you have the ability to control. And it ends up there because when we do these financial statements, we needed to use the 12/31/2016 information from the Wisconsin retirement system, and obviously we did your 12/31/17 financial statements. So there's always this timing difference, and there's no way to resolve that between when WRS does their evaluation and does their work on their audit versus when we do your work on the audit. So it's really a parking place for some temporary differences that occur because of that. The liabilities in total were about $6.1 million, with the majority of that being any of your revenue bonds, mortgage payables, things of that nature would be consistent or would be comprised in there. Then you have your deferred outflows of resources. Two things there you will see. The first one being related to the pension. Again, that's due to the Wisconsin retirement system and that difference of valuation dates. It's really more of a timing thing than it is anything else. And then the next item is the taxes levied for the subsequent period. So you levy taxes in December of 2017, and it didn't become revenue until 2018, because that's when you budgeted to use those funds in order to meet all of the various expenses of the village. As we look at the net position, you see a net investment in capital assets there of about $7.4 million. That number is simply the difference between what your overall capital assets are, so again, the buildings, the sidewalks, the streets, all of that kind of stuff, less any debt that's related to that that's still outstanding. And a number that you see there that's a good, positive, healthy number like that really is reflective of the village doing a good job of how long their assets are able to last or how much life they have versus the amount of debt that you've taken out to finance those. It's indicative of not borrowing long-term or short-term kind of things, so the number that you have there is really a good, healthy number and very important for a village. The restricted amount is items that must be used for particular purposes. So for example, at the end of 2017, you had some dollars that were borrowed, that were, I think, within the debt service fund that didn't get utilized to the following year. That's the biggest balance of that. So there's outside restrictions that tell you how you have to use those particular resources. As you look at the unrestricted of about 1.8 million, that's really where you can see the health of the village on a long-term basis as far as resources that this board has the ability to control. Extremely important that you have a good, healthy number there, which 1.8 million is a very good number there, because it gives you that ability to make decisions on, for example, whether or not you want to borrow for a capital asset improvement, or whether or not you think you have funds on a long-term basis to be able to do that. Just things of that nature that's very important for the village to be able to control. On pages 15 and 16 is the balance sheet. This particular statement is meant to be short-term in nature, has all of the same kind of information as the one I just talked about, with two glaring things missing, probably three glaring things missing. The first one being those capital assets, the second one being anything related to the Wisconsin retirement system, and the third one being any of that long-term debt. So you don't see any of those three items here. And typically when we look at this, the focus is really on the general fund, and it's really on that fund balance, because when you guys get together, probably starting about now, because it's rolling around in a hurry at budget time, you may talk about, do we have resources that we've been able to accumulate in the past that you might want to use for the budget? By the same token, you may say, is our fund balance really high enough, or should we be doing something to try and have that improved to make sure the village has more flexibility? Hence why I had to go outside, because I can't see these little numbers. So as we look at those fund balances, you see the non-spendable portion there is $635,000 roughly. That consists of two things: the advances to other funds you see above, as well as the delinquent personal property taxes. And they're considered non-spendable because, again, this is short-term in nature, so it looks at things that you expect to be able to utilize the resources within 60 days from December 31st of 2017. Weren't sure at that point in time when you would get paid back those advances of funds, and obviously not sure when those personal property taxes that were delinquent might be collected. So they're considered to be non-spendable. The assigned is amounts that you as a board have assigned to particular expenditures, and there is a footnote later in the statements that lay that out. So perhaps you said it should be used for equipment or capital projects or something like that. That's what that means. And then the unassigned fund balance of $123,000, as we look at that, we typically would compare it to a typical year's expenditures or that last year's expenditures. And as you look at the general fund, your expenditures were about $2.1 million. So that $124,000, $123,000 is really light on a short-term basis. Means as a board, you don't have a lot of flexibility. That as you're doing your budget, you don't have resources, for instance, this year that you can say we're going to spend next year. Because if you start doing that, you're going to find yourselves with potentially an unassigned. So as a board, you need to be a little bit careful as far as short-term basis, making sure that you are planning your revenues and expenditures accordingly to have that, not have that fund balance affected. With that, I will move over to page 18 and 19, which is basically the income statement for the village. And again, as we look at the general fund, where the majority of the activity occurs, you can see there that you did have about $2.1 million and some change in total revenues versus about the $2.1 million in expenses. So you came out pretty close to break even. There was a $60,000 prior to the kind of transfers in and transfers out. So you did have an increase in your fund balance of about $56,000 for the year. Page 21 is the statement of net position for the water and sewer utility. And similar to the first statement I talked about, this is long-term in nature, so it includes all of the assets and all the liabilities. And as we look at that, the total assets were about $13.2 million, of which the majority of that is your non-current assets of about $12.4 million. Then you can see there's some of those deferred outflows, again, purely related to Wisconsin retirement system. Your total liabilities of about $4.4, those deferred outflows, again, related to Wisconsin retirement. And as we look at that net investment in capital assets, again, a very good, strong number there, again, indicative of that the investment that you're making into your water and sewer utility, that value or that life of those assets is really holding itself well versus the dollars that you needed to borrow in order to make those investments. Restricted are going to be a little bit higher always on a water and sewer utility because you have the DNR and other folks who say you have to put certain funds aside for particular purposes. And again, that is detailed in the note later in the financial statements. But then you look at your unrestricted and it's $170,000. So on a long-term basis, again, your water and sewer utility, there's not a lot of flexibility there. Because $170,000 on a long-term basis when you have those kind of assets is really pretty slim. So you need to make sure that you're looking at those revenues and expenses closely and managing those for the future as well. As you look at page 22, that is the income statement for the proprietary fund. You will see there that revenues in total were about 1.5 million, expenses about 1.1. So there was a operating income of about $400,000. And there's some non-operating expenses, mainly for interest, of about $53,000. So you did have a profit of about $352,000. And this year, you had a capital contribution, which is basically contributions toward the water and sewer plant itself. So you did have an increase in that net position of about $702,000. Without that, when I said that you were a little bit shy with that $169,000, you would have ended up short, okay? And you would have had brackets in that position, which is never a good thing on a financial statement of that nature. Page 42 and 43 is just a summary of that long-term debt. You can see there for the governmental funds, the total is about $5.9 million, the majority of which is bonds and notes payable. And that detail for that is in the middle of page 43, that you can see each one of the issuances that started back in 2013 through 2017. You can see each one of the interest rates there, which you have very good interest rates on each and every one of those, and you can see the remaining balance. For the business type activities, the water and sewer, up at the top of page 43, that total debt was about $3.8 million. Again, the majority of that being the revenue bonds, and you can see that is just one issuance that was from back in 2010, and that is the one issuance that you still have outstanding. Another important number to look at is on page 44. In the middle of that page, you see your ability to borrow, basically your remaining margin of indebtedness. You can see there you could borrow up to about $9.6 million if you so chose. You've borrowed $5.8 million, that counts against that. Right now you have some dollars from one of the issuances that had not been spent yet. So you do have a remaining balance or ability to borrow about $5.2 million. You never want to push the envelope and have that get too small, because it really, again, takes away your flexibility for being able to borrow for projects as they're coming up or as they're occurring. So just need to keep an eye on that as well. What I was going to talk about, unless there's particular questions that anyone wanted to ask me regarding the financial statements or anything else. The Packers are going to win if you ask me that question.
No questions, I guess you can go.
That's it. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate being able to work with the village, and if after this meeting you do have any questions, certainly feel free to funnel them to myself or Jackie Wilson, who is the manager on your engagement, and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
I do have one really quick question. You said we were low, and I forget what the term was, on our
Fund balance.
Fund balance. How do we get that back up? I mean, is it just, are there some strategies on how to get that back up, or is it just, here's what it is?
It's sort of difficult these days when you have revenue limits such as you do, but truly the way that you can do that is if you're able to, lucky enough to, find some additional revenue sources that the village is able to have, and otherwise you have to look at your costs and make sure that you're appropriately controlling costs. Some folks will try and maybe, as they're doing their long-term planning for capital improvements, make sure that they're getting those falling into the right years, so you're not spending too much money in one year and being able to move those out.
One of the things that sometimes communities tend to be overly aggressive in estimating the revenues. And what seems to work well for some communities is maybe trying to be as conservative as possible and being realistic, but on the conservative side, estimating revenues so that you're pleasantly surprised that revenues come in more than what you thought. And of course, in my just brief time with Hortonville, I think the department staff has done a good job, but again, some communities have a tendency that you appropriate X amount of dollars and a lot of departments will spend up to that max. And then whatever you can do to kind of minimize that potential and just, buying the stuff that you really need. But some of it, I think, what makes it really hard now is that with expenditure restraint and levy limits, it's hard to really budget to have a surplus. So you just have to do good management techniques to kind of control and look at how you budget your revenue and how they come in and how you budget expenditures.
Which I know we've been doing.
Yeah.
We're just never gonna have.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is citizens' request for discussion on local motor vehicle registrations. Known as real tax, our citizen is here.
Yeah, he failed to show, or he said he couldn't make it, so I guess.
Was there any discussion from the board on this, or?
If we can find out when this resident or person is able to come, could we put it back on the agenda?
Sure.
Seems to me like it makes sense.
I'll advise them that when they can make it to contact Jane,
Yeah.
set it up on the agenda.
Then we will move on to resolution to terminate existing agreement for Otto Miller Park.
This is just official notice for the two expired agreements with, one with the school district and one with youth sports. Again, it's just to make it official and on paper, so.
And for Kelly, that the committee of the whole did vote to recommend the termination of existing agreements. So we would need a motion on R-11-18.
I'll make a motion to approve the termination under R-11-18.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are terminated. Park use request, Tinker Garden Parks and Green Space.
I'll take that. Tinker Gardens, Parks and Green Spaces is an outdoor educational program. Apparently they're becoming more and more popular. They utilize parks and open spaces to have one class per week for about an hour. They go out and they teach kids about nature and all this good stuff. What they're asking for is use of the parks without having to do any reservations or anything like that. They said they have one class, well, they have two classes, they're each 1 hour a week, but they won't interfere with any renting of the facilities. They basically just want to meet in the park and have kids, look for butterflies and birds and trees and stuff like that. I think it's a decent program. I recommend that we allow them to at least try it, and if something happens that they end up interfering with actual rentals and stuff like that, then we can reevaluate it next time, I guess. I don't have a problem with them using the park if they're just out there.
Well, that's what.
That's what the park's for, yeah.
How much of a time frame are we looking for? 1 month, 2 months, 4 months?
It's a 2-month class. They have one class in the morning and one class in the early evening. Runs from November through, from September through November. They're just outdoor classes, again, 1 hour class. Yeah, so,
Is this Monday through Friday?
no, it's just one day a week.
No, but I mean, it's not on a weekend when the park would be utilized?
Not that I've seen, no.
Okay.
I think it's actually a good idea, get kids out of the house, or kids that normally wouldn't.
Ages 0 to 8.
Yeah.
Online.
What are you looking for, Carl, motion?
I guess just general consensus, yeah, let them use it. So, I know typically we have, we don't, they do charge for the classes, but they have to have a qualified instructor come out and teach the kids, so. I know sometimes for using buildings and facilities, we've always questioned a for-profit place, but I think if they're outdoors, more power to them, so. I'm just looking for, I guess, a general consensus. I don't even think I need a motion.
I would think if we're going to waive the fee, we should have a motion for it. Are they going to take care of any mess that might be left there?
They said they were, again,
No trace.
they leave no trace, and they require no support, so.
Can we put in the motion that if a rental opportunity becomes available, that they could be bumped, or is that not?
They basically state that they would adjust themselves
Yeah.
accordingly.
It would make sense if they could just do a different park, or,
Yeah, they seem pretty flexible.
Then I would make a motion that we allow this to happen as long as it doesn't interfere with rentals.
I'll second that.
And the waiver of fee.
And the waiver of fee, sorry.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have it, Is there any other miscellaneous topics for future discussion?
I have one, maybe this isn't a discussion item, but is it possible when new businesses come into Hortonville, that any of that has any board action? There's a lot of people that come and go into these buildings that we don't know about. Is it possible for us to be made aware of that, so, as board members, as supposed to be the leadership of the community, we know about it, so we can, at least maybe make an effort to go down and see the new business and welcome them to the community, and I don't even know if that's a discussion, I'm just curious as to.
Is that something that we could do, like, maybe tell Nathan to let the board members know about it, or?
I think, did we have something like that, and nobody showed up?
Carl, the only reason I'm asking this is when I went down and there was some kids, I think it was youth sports, were having a broughton burger.
Oh, that, yeah.
And I was told it was for welcoming a new business downtown, and I was like, I didn't know anything about it. Not that we need to, it's not a board actionable thing, but it would have been nice to.
Yeah, it'd be just something that
Just know that.
he sent out to the board members that said, XYZ company has moved into
I
town.
can't recall if we put that on Facebook or not. Normally we do,
Yeah.
but.
What if it's just a quick note on the board members'
And again,
emails?
we can discuss it, I just wanted to.
Like
Welcome, Wayne.
welcome William, sort of.
No discussion.
Yeah, I'd just like to. Okay, that was it, sorry.
Done.
Is there any miscellaneous topics for future discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to report of village officials, administrator.
And just a quick follow-up on that last comment, if I may. Normally, I've gotten into the habit of doing like a weekly update where I'd make some of those announcements and just email that out. I'll try doing that in the future. I have not had an opportunity to do that here, but it was something I've done in some of the other communities, and it's worked out really well. So, yeah, the big thing is just getting information out to village board members. Most of my time the last couple weeks have been focusing on the recruiting for the administrator's position. We got some discussions later on in closed session to talk about that. Still exploring options for employee health insurance. We received notification on average that we're looking at about a 17% increase in premiums, and we're looking at what options might be available, so I hope to get some of those numbers and report back. Peter talked about it a little bit at the committee of the whole, but we also spent some time starting out negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement with our police bargaining unit. That expires on 12/31 of 18, so we hope to have something in place that would be helpful to know that, kind of where we might be as far as our budgeting process. Working with department heads and staff members on our budgeting process. We'll be sitting down and talking about some list of milestones and things we want to get accomplished so that we can get the budget in front of the village board in November and how we set that up. So those are some of the main topics that I've been working on.
Any questions or comments on the administrator's report? Hearing none, we'll move to clerk treasurer.
The partisan primary, we had a 30% turnout, which was quite high.
Wow.
Typically, it's about 19% turnout. In 2014, it was about, half, so about 15%. So it went off without a hitch, everything turned out good.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'm usually the first in line. I had 5 people who told me when I got here.
Any questions or comments for the clerk treasurer? Hearing none, director of public works.
I also have it on the memo I handed out. The Pine Street water main project, as well as the Brickwood Drive water main road construction project, they're going out for bids next week. We combined them together again and offered a relaxed timeline for construction in order to get the best pricing available for the Parker Heights residents. Allegheny County Solid Waste sent out a notice that they're increasing their tipping fees by $1 a ton from $20 to $21. And that's just for, you also have to add on the WDNR fees and the Allegheny County recycling fees. So the total tipping fee for next year is going to be $46 per ton. That'll have some bearing on our garbage contract regardless. So.
Hey, Carl, did you ever find out if our solid waste went down after we recycled?
There's no way to quantify it right now.
Okay.
And even then, we've grown a little bit. People may be throwing out, it's just, it's almost impossible. I know Jeannie had asked as well, and we just never.
Well, they said they would let us know after probably a year. It was too soon. We won't know anything this year, they said.
Okay.
Because we just started it with the big cans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I have noticed is we no longer have garbage blowing around town from recyclables. That's something we always got. Yeah. So that's nice. That's perfect right there. Paul Allen and I, the building inspector, will be attending a 2018 debris management tabletop exercise. Are you going to that? Mm-hmm. She's going to that. That's on October 16th, and that's at the Allegheny County Highway Department. And that deals with mainly post-disaster cleanup, debris management, that kind of stuff, like what we went through in 13. So it'll be good for us. It'll be good for Chris, and I think Chris even helped out during that storm, even though she was worked for another municipality. So thanks to that. We had a recycling event down here on August 4th, and there was 9,334 pounds of electronic waste brought in. And that's almost 2,000 pounds more than we had last year. So, good event. The offer of purchase for the industrial park parcel, we got the official WB13 back. Me and Bob have to look at that yet and just make sure everything's correct on that. They're in no rush. We'll look at it next week. And one last thing is, we're going to be looking into expanding the hours of the drop-off site. I know we've had a lot of problems with illegal dumping, a lot of complaints online, but unfortunately we just cannot afford to leave it open all 24 hours a day. So we're going to look at if there's volunteers, all these people. If anybody wants to volunteer to work the site, we can leave it open. Otherwise, we're going to have to pay somebody to stay down there. We're going to definitely have it open for extra hours during the fall when we have leaves or falling and stuff, but as of right now, we just cannot afford to leave the gates open. So.
Is Dave full-time employee?
No, but one of the issues, I can't, it's personnel there, I can't.
Right.
So a volunteer, sort of like when you pull your boat out of a particular lake and there's somebody there volunteering that checks to make sure you...
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we'd certainly look for volunteers.
Okay.
Maybe we can put that on Facebook.
Compost casting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know it's an inconvenience for some people, but we can no longer afford to subsidize these other townships.
We don't have the gate up as of yet.
There's just a rope now. I'm missing one man, I had two guys off, but they're just shorthanded, so.
I've had several questions about the position of that gate, if it could be moved to the other side of the...
Well, then we might as well not have one at all, because they're just gonna throw it in the brush, in the compost.
Oh, that was the
Yeah.
question. I mean,
You give people an inch, they'll take a mile.
You gotta close the gate, you gotta close the gate.
We have an entrance there where citizens can walk in anytime they want and take grass back. But if you open that, if you move that gate back, which we've already got cemented in, it's not moving anywhere. But if you move that gate back, they're just gonna throw everything, anything, into the yard waste. They do it in front of you. I went down there this week, I got two people, and they will go with dumping. They don't care. They absolutely do not care.
one of the things too is, do we have the ability to fine those that are illegally dumping?
I believe it's a $200 lettering fine plus court costs, $89.
They could, even though the officers might not be there, can we get their license plate number and have once
Well, I didn't want to say it from the
one
demo.
issued, or?
Yeah.
Because that's one of them that they said might put a stop to it, word gets out that they're,
You know,
either caught or fined.
I followed people to $300,000-400,000 homes, they come down there and put rags over their license plates. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. If you can't, when you have people doing that, you're better off just shutting it down.
Yeah.
I mean,
But if they're coming in during the day when nobody's seeing it, then...
Well, I won't say public, but we can't read license plates. We can see what kind of car it is, but we can't read the plate. Not without spending a lot of money. And that's the bottom line, is I don't have the money right now to deal with the brush I have, much less buy security or cards or this or that.
Well, like you said, you saw two of them illegally dumping.
But I can't write tickets, you know.
No, but you could get their license plate and give it to Chris.
Oh, yeah, you could report it to him.
Yeah.
Right.
But even then, Jason's been stopping a few, and, we've been writing warnings and this and that, but it just,
Is that
they keep
a
coming.
public works issue, or is that a public facility?
I think it started out public works, and it's kind of trending towards public facilities, because it is a site for citizens.
Should we schedule a meeting and come to some sort of resolve as to what we want to do there?
We started our meeting with Public Works.
Yeah.
And
But it's, like I said, it's morphing, I know me and Pat had talked about it a little bit, it started out public works as strictly budgetary concerns. But no, it's also,
public facilities.
it's trending towards public
Do you
facilities.
want to do something, have a meeting? try to
Yeah,
have some-
I'd like to.
Let's, you know what, let's you and I talk, and we'll come up.
We'll talk, because again, it comes down to money.
Well, absolutely, no, I get it, but now's the time to do it with the budget coming up.
And fall, yard cleanup coming up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I do have enough to have him work, maybe extend it 3 hours. Because my guys can open the gate for a little bit, and then he can come down at 9 and work till noon.
Let's just have a meeting and put your ideas down, and we'll come up with some solutions and bring it over.
Yeah, we can do that. I'll email you.
All right, thank you.
That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments for Carl? Hearing none, police department.
Like Rose said, that we're working on negotiations. And then we had our national night out last week, Tuesday. It was a huge success. We had probably an all-time record of participants who attended. I figure we were about 400 to 425. However, we were running out of chips and cups, and so we were doing a lot of running, so.
Yeah, the past
Next year.
year's probably averaged between 100 and 150 people.
Wow.
Yeah,
It was great.
so we totally got slammed. Yeah. It was a good time. I think everybody had just a blast, so. Yeah,
Thank you for doing that.
I don't have anything else.
Any questions or comments for Chris? Hearing none, we'll move on to library director.
All right, our summer program wraps up on Saturday with our end of summer party. Last year we had about 360 some people show up. We're not anticipating quite as many this year. A lot of people are out of town and on vacation this last week. But we're going to have an ice cream social provided by the Friends of the Library. We're going to have rock painting. Our summer theme was Libraries Rock, so it fit in really well. And we will be raffling off all of our prize baskets. Total, we've amassed about 6,300 hours of teens and kids reading, and we've just figured that by counting their reading logs that they've been turning in. We fell short of our goal of 1,000 registrants, but we have 983 people registered. So that's a pretty good number to be considered. We had our library board meeting last week, and we were discussing altering the library hours. We've gotten a lot of patron and community suggestions to open earlier. In order to do that, we did have to alter a little bit the evening hours. So I can pass these around. Effective October 1st, where we will be open at 9 a.m. every morning instead of 10. That extra hour will really help with morning patrons, because we've gotten many, many complaints that 10 a.m. is too late to open the library. In order to account for earlier hours, Monday and Tuesday nights were very, very slow, so we pushed that back to closing at 6 rather than 8 o'clock at night. And just based on our door counts, those were our slowest nights. We would have maybe 20 people come in between 3 and 8. It was just very slow. And then considering that our Saturdays are always very slow as well, with a random busy Saturday thrown in at any given time, we have changed those hours to 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. To kind of limit that variance. So I am creating posters. I have started the public notice of that because this will be effective October 1st, which conveniently falls on a Monday. So just getting the word out there is going to be key. I did create a poster, well, this kind of backing up, a poster thanking our sponsors for all of our summer stuff this summer. We've had an amazing turnout. So that's about all I've got.
Any questions or comments for Alex? Hearing none, we'll move on to attorney.
Okay, Douglas Street update. They had until yesterday, the 15th, and I did talk to the lady again, but she did not respond by email as I told her she needed to. So where it's been left is we're in the process, I'm drafting a nuisance complaint. We'll take this to court unless in the meantime the owner of the property comes forward with a reasonable plan to address the problems. So, we gave them quite a bit of time, as I reported, I think the last 2 meetings, they should have been acting on it. And we're going to also, when Carl's group has time, we're going to get at the news. This skeleton school right now, but try to address that right away and then go to court on that. That's all I have.
Any questions or comments for Bob? Hearing none, building permit report was in our packet last meeting. And we'll move on to communications and this miscellaneous business. Blackwater Lake District news. As far as the harvester, we're waiting for Chris to get back from vacation and do some work on that. And our annual meeting is on the 27th. So,
This is 27 coming up.
August 27th, last Monday. That's all I have for Blackwater Lake. Got the Hortonville Hortonia Fire District.
we have a meeting tentatively scheduled for September 11th to talk about the SCBA purchase. Trying to figure out what we gotta do with that so that I can come back to the board and tell the board what we're gonna do. So,
Gold Cross Ambulance run reports and news is in your packet, or any questions or comments on that? Hearing none. We even have a downtown business association?
I was gonna ask you that. I think that's kind of defunct.
No, that's what I was thinking. Can we move on to Hortonville Civic?
Nothing at this time.
Downtown Zoning Task Force, I don't think we have that anymore.
And my understanding is that's pretty much wrapped up. After they've done the recommendation, I went to planning and zoning. It'll be coming from the village board in September 6th.
That was stuck on, you want those removed from that template?
I think both of those could be removed from there. Then we go on to Senior Activities Committee.
Okay, we had a meeting scheduled for August 2nd, however, we didn't have a quorum, so we had scheduled to meet at the Congregate Meal Site, which is at the Opera House. But because we had some community members there and agency reps, we just kind of had a listening session, just a chance to talk, so we couldn't conduct any business. But I just wanted to update you on some of the concerns. The numbers are down significantly for the congregate meals. Different opinions were that the food wasn't all that good. So that they're talking about that. Also, meeting activities to go along with the meals. At many senior sites, they do have games, card games, whatever, after the meals. And another thing was a potluck, and the birthday parties are here, the meals are at the Opera House. So ideally, in the ideal world, everything would be at one place for seniors. So that was just some of the things we talked about. Transportation, we talked about how can we work together and publicize it more to get more people there. We're coming up with some ideas for that. We did have a rep from the Fox West Y there, as well as Valley VNA. We want to do more outreach with churches again, and get some more input, more collaboration, so we can get more participation. Another thing is more publicity. Again, a request for written newsletter mailed out to seniors as opposed to only online. And I think I brought that up before. And then another thing that came up about rentals at the Opera House, if rentals could wait till 12:30 during the week, because they need, when they prepare the meals, and these are frozen and delivered, and the congregate meals, they need to have the facility, the kitchen, till 12:30. So I think there was only one conflict with that. So our next meeting is the 20th of September. We have a person that is a Hortonville resident who is the volunteer coordinator for the meal sites who is interested in being on the committee. So I think she's going to be a good go-between between the county and us to try to get the meal site, up and running a little bit better. And then we have our Autumn Fest on October 24th. So that's all.
2 comments on it. With the potluck and the birthday party, that was discussed with people that show up here about having it down there instead, and the majority wanted to leave it here. They didn't want to go down there. They did suggest about having maybe another day during the week that they would go down there, but the potluck and birthday parties, they wanted to leave here. The other was, you sent me about the person that's there.
Yep.
And I noticed they didn't have a Hortonville address. Was that just their office address?
That was the office address. She lives in
Okay.
Hortonville. And Monica Pomasel? It was Pomasl, and she's a Hortonville resident.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on the senior activities? Hearing none, we'll move on to comment and suggestions from citizens present. Anybody have anything? Hearing none, we need a motion to go into closed session under state statute section 19.851F and for 1C.
I'll make that motion.
What,
There was,
they just, don't they have to be separate?
Yeah, there's two
Okay.
separate matters.
Yeah, so we have to go into closed session, discussion, come back out, go back in.
okay, we'll do it that way. We'll do it for 1F.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session 19.85 and 1F.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
But
We'll give 5 minutes to